In the millionaire's mansion, there reigned a silence perfected to the smallest detail. Not a single superfluous sound, only the distant rustle of maid's steps and the occasional clink of porcelain in the enormous dining room. Huge crystal chandeliers glittered in the lofty halls, casting golden reflections onto the marble floor. Everything in the house was impeccable: carved columns, handmade carpets, paintings by the most renowned artists. And yet this magnificence felt cold, like a museum where no one had the right to enter without permission. For Alina, the only daughter of the owner of all this wealth, such order was ordinary. She was born and raised here, behind high walls that shielded her from the outside world. Since childhood, she had heard the same instructions from her father. The world is cruel, Alina. Out there, they will use you, deceive you. Here you are safe, and here alone you have the best of everything. Her father, Nikolai Sergeyevich, was a stern man, accustomed to controlling everything and everyone. His business held weight in several countries, his name appeared in the press, he was respected and feared. But behind this facade of power and wealth lay one weakness: his boundless love for his daughter, expressed through overprotection. He wanted to shield her from everything, even from the very breath of the street. Alina never attended a regular school. Teachers came to her home, taught her foreign languages, mathematics, history, art. She had the best books, expensive instruments, tutors in music and painting. But all this knowledge was like golden walls, beautiful but still walls. In her room stood a huge window overlooking the inner garden, neatly trimmed bushes, flower beds of rare plants, a fountain from which water arched gracefully. But beyond the garden was a tall fence, and that fence always seemed to her like the end of the universe. She longed to know what lay beyond, where people walked the streets, where markets buzzed and the smell of fresh bread drifted from bakeries, where one could accidentally meet a passerby and smile. Sometimes, when her father hosted parties for business partners, Alina saw the guests, women in glittering dresses, men in expensive suits. They always spoke of the same things: deals, real estate, projects. No one ever talked about simple things: what it felt like to ride a crowded bus, to hold an ice cream cone melting in the sun, or to catch snowflakes on one's palm. Loneliness became her constant companion. She had books, paintings, and music, but no friends. Once, as a child, she had asked her father, "Papa, can I play with the neighbor's children? I saw them chasing a ball." Her father looked at her sternly. "That's not for you. You are too precious." From then on, she stopped asking such questions. But the desire never disappeared. It gathered in her heart like a quiet river, impossible to dam. When a new maid arrived, Alina immediately sensed she was different. Maria was a young woman of about 25. Her features were simple, but her gaze was clear and warm, as if she could see right through people. Unlike the other workers, who feared speaking to the master's daughter, Maria did not act the timid servant. She spoke calmly, respectfully, but without artificial stiffness. Alina first noticed her in the library. The girl, carefully dusting the shelves, was humming some tune to herself. The sound was so alive, so real, that Alina approached and asked, "What are you singing?" Maria blushed but answered, "A song from my childhood. In our village, everyone knew it." Alina listened to her voice and suddenly felt a strange thrill. This simple song seemed dearer than all the classical pieces her music teachers had performed. Over time, conversations began. Between them, at first cautious, in short phrases. But soon Maria noticed that the master's daughter often lingered by the window, staring into the distance, as if waiting for something. "You always look out there," Maria said once, pausing beside her. "What are you thinking about?" Alina sighed. "Out there, beyond the fence, I've never been there. I don't know what it's like just to step outside." Maria raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Never? Not even to a store?" Alina shook her head. "Never. Father says it's dangerous." There was such longing in her voice that Maria couldn't resist. She pulled a small bundle from her pocket, untied it carefully, and held it out to Alina. Inside was a dried sprig of lavender. "This is from my garden," she said. "Try smelling it." Alina cautiously brought the flower to her face. A light, warm, dry scent filled her lungs. She froze. It was the first real smell of nature, not from an expensive perfume bottle, not artificial. Her eyes filled with tears, and she whispered softly, "Is this what freedom smells like?" Maria smiled gently. "This is what summer smells like." From that day on, their conversations became Alina's secret joy. Maria brought her small treasures from the outside world: a smooth stone from a riverbank, a leaf turned yellow in the wind, a scrap of a cheap newspaper with bright ads. To Alina, they were priceless. She kept them in a box and studied them at night as though they were jewels. But the greatest revelation was a small photograph Maria once brought. It showed an ordinary street: boys kicking a ball, women arguing at a stall, old men sitting on a bench. Alina held the photo for a long time, as if afraid it would vanish. Her heart raced, her eyes shone. "Does it really look like this?" she asked. "Yes," Maria nodded. "And that's just a tiny corner. The world is vast." Alina felt the walls around her tremble. For the first time in years, hope filled her heart. Maybe one day she would see it all with her own eyes. Maria looked at her intently and said, "You know, your world doesn't end here, inside these walls. It begins out there. And one day, you must see it." Those words sank deep into Alina's heart. She didn't yet know how it would happen, but she knew she could no longer live the same way. From that evening, when Maria showed her the first photograph of the street, it was as if a lamp had been lit inside Alina. She changed. She no longer spent hours in the library with books, but often sat by the window, straining to catch every shadow, every sound beyond the fence. She never stopped asking questions. What does a noisy square sound like? What does one feel eating ice cream in the heat? Is it true that buses always smell of different people and their things? Maria answered patiently, and each story was a small journey for Alina. But the more she learned, the stronger her longing grew. Listening to others' tales wasn't enough. She wanted to touch the world herself. One evening, as they sat in Alina's room examining new treasures, a dried chestnut leaf and a train ticket, Maria suddenly said, "If you truly want to see it all yourself, I can help you." Alina's head shot up. Her heart pounded so loudly it seemed it might echo through the walls. "But, how? It's impossible. Father would never allow it." Maria looked serious. "Then we won't ask permission." Those words sounded dangerous and irresistible all at once. Alina trembled, fear and delight mingled together. "What if we're caught?" she whispered. "Then we'll be careful," Maria said firmly. "You must feel at least once what it's like to live in the world." For several days, Alina lived in anxious anticipation. She imagined them walking beyond the gates, seeing streets, people, shop windows, then grew afraid. What if her father found out? What if something really happened? But the desire was stronger than fear. The night came when the guards switched shifts, and a brief commotion settled over the house. Maria approached Alina, dressed simply, in a jacket, jeans, sneakers. She handed Alina similar clothes. "Put these on. Dressed like this, you'll look like an ordinary girl, and no one will know who you are." Alina hesitated, then gave in. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize her reflection. It wasn't the millionaire's daughter, but an ordinary girl, like any passerby. They slipped quietly down the corridors, descended the stairs, and exited through the back door. Maria knew the guards' routines and led her along a path with fewer cameras. Bushes grew along the wall, and they hid in the shadows, waiting until a guard walked past. Alina's heart thumped so loudly she feared it would give them away. And then, the gates were behind them. For the first time in her life, Alina stepped onto the street. The first thing she felt was the smell: gentle, damp, warm, asphalt after rain. Then came the sound: cars rushing past, voices nearby, the distant bark of a dog. All blended into one vast, living stream. "My God," whispered Alina. "It's so real." She walked in a daze. Everything seemed miraculous. A shop window with bright lights, a bus stop where teenagers laughed loudly, even tattered billboards peeling on the corner of a building. Maria led her to a park. It was lively. Children rollerbladed, parents chased them, couples sat on benches holding hands. Alina stopped, overwhelmed by this simple yet vivid scene. "They're so free," she said. "No one looks down on them, no one forbids them to laugh." On a bench nearby, a street musician played the violin. His music was imperfect, sometimes off-key, but that was what made it real. Alina listened, transfixed. Her eyes sparkled, her cheeks flushed. "I've never heard a sound like this," she admitted. "Even the finest musicians at home never played so truly." They bought ice cream from a vendor. The cold treat melted faster than she could eat it. Alina laughed when drops trickled down her fingers. For the first time, she felt alive. But happiness didn't last long. An hour later, as they were about to return, a black car pulled up to the park. Two men in suits, her father's guards, stepped out, their faces grim. One strode straight to Maria and Alina. "Madam," he said sternly, "your father is furious. We must return you home immediately." Alina paled. She knew what awaited Maria. But the girl squeezed her hand tightly and whispered, "Don't be afraid. The main thing, don't stay silent." They were brought back to the mansion. In the hall stood Nikolai Sergeyevich. His face was stone, his eyes burning with rage. "How dare you?" he roared at his daughter. "And you," his gaze turned to Maria, "you are banished from here forever. You put my daughter in danger." Maria opened her mouth to defend herself, but Alina cut her off. For the first time in her life, she lifted her head and said firmly, "No, she didn't put me in danger. She showed me life." Her father froze. Never before had his daughter spoken to him like that. Her voice carried a strength he hadn't expected. "You don't understand what you're saying," he said coldly. "The world is cruel." "No," Alina replied. "The world is alive. Out there, people laugh, cry, live. And here, I am dying, while outside life breathes." Her words pierced him. He wanted to argue, but couldn't. In her eyes burned a fire he himself had long ago lost, buried under business and power. "If you don't let me see the world," Alina said firmly, "I will leave on my own. I will not be a prisoner, even if the prison is made of gold." Silence fell. For the first time, Nikolai Sergeyevich realized there was no point keeping his daughter locked away. She had grown up. She was no longer a little girl, but a person ready to walk her own path. Maria did not lose her job. The father wanted to fire her, but seeing his daughter's resolve, he was forced to yield. More than that, thanks to Maria, Alina began to go into the city, at first with guards, then even on her own. She learned the simplest things: buying bread, chatting with shopkeepers, riding the subway. She learned to laugh with people, to feel the rain on her skin, to hear the noise of the street. For Nikolai Sergeyevich, it was a trial. Each time he saw his daughter among ordinary people, his heart clenched with fear. But each time he noticed something else. Her eyes shone, her smile was real. Gradually he understood, the world was not as frightening as he thought. It was not only cruel, it was beautiful in its simplicity. As for Alina, she kept in her box that very first photograph of the street. A reminder of the day her world finally opened. And each time she looked at the picture, she smiled softly. Because she knew, all of it became possible thanks to one simple woman who dared to show her life.